Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Tin mining companies that certify their ore against conflict are receiving prices double those of non-certified participants. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Martin, can you provide some brief details about the certification scheme as well as the benefits of taking part?
It all began in 2010 with Barack Obama and the idea that, we've got a whole lot of mod cons that we use, laptops and everything, and the metals and minerals in these are sometimes covered in blood because, they've come out of an area where there's conflict. They come out of an area where the warlords are in control, and they actually use those metals as leverage to get themselves weapons. So there were two politicians in the US, Dodd and Frank, and they decided to introduce new legislation, and it's now known as the Dodd-Frank Act. And that this legislation makes sure that if you're taking tin, tantalum, tungsten and gold out of conflict areas, you have to certify that it's conflict-free. It comes out of that whole Kimberley process with the diamonds and the movie on blood diamonds, and we saw the atrocities, that took place in Sierra Leone, Liberia, Angola. And people were saying, look, we can't hang this jewelry around our neck when we know where it comes from. So unless we know where it comes from, and that when it comes from those areas, there must be no conflict, it must be clean. And this is where that certification came in. But of course, Dodd-Frank said, all the companies listed on the US Stock Exchange must now be subject to this legislation. And they left the institution in charge as the US Exchange and Securities Commission, which has really dragged its feet on this thing. I mean, it's been embarrassing for the Americans, the way they've just further extended the deadlines all the time. And even now, when we spoke to the US State Department, they were speaking from Washington, and there were people coming through from Kinshasa, Johannesburg, and many other parts of Africa. When we said, what is the date, the deadline for all this, they still couldn't give a firm date. They said sometime in 2014. So you can see it's still not nailed down. It's a very difficult thing, and it backfires on Africa because the corporations in America say this is so onerous that we will rather not source our metals from Africa. We'll get them elsewhere, and it has unintended consequences. So that's why they're trying to get in there and make sure that there are areas that have traceability certification, and that any metals and minerals coming out of those areas has a certificate of origin, so that it's commonly called bagging and tagging. And they're trying to get this right, but you can see only about 10% of the sites have really been covered even now. So there's a long time to go with this. But those that are conforming, and you see in tin, tin is the new copper. Everybody's going for tin at the moment, just like they went for copper, 5 years ago, because they're saying this is the metal of the moment. We see tin cans, jam and baked beans. But it's being used a lot in electronics now. So it's getting a lot of new modern uses, and people are rushing out and trying to secure tin deposits. And you can see now with the miners who have taken the trouble to bag and tag and certify, they are getting double the price for their tin, coming out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Instead of getting like the $2 a kilogram, they're getting $4 a kilogram. Of course, they also have to bag and tag ahead of that.
How much does bagging and tagging cost?
Yeah, that is a question we put into this press conference. Exactly what does it cost? Because we know that some of the South Africans who've been involved say, look, it's a worthwhile thing, but it's tedious. And it's not as simple as it looks. And they were estimating that it probably costs, if you take it down to kilogram level, it's about from 30 US cents to 50 US cents a kilogram. So you can see it's still manageable within this premium that they're getting. Instead of getting $2 a kilogram, they're getting $4 a kilogram. But they're saying they want to try and streamline it and lower its cost and look for alternative ways of doing this to make it less tedious.
Did they mention any of the alternative ways?
No, they just said they're working on them. They've been doing it for a long time.
Now, US aid has provided $18 million since 2010 to support efforts to create responsible mining in the DRC. How is that money being used? It's
interesting. We were also the ones that put that. We must be money-minded because we kept on asking them the money questions. And I must say, they are really stretching that money. It doesn't seem an enormous amount of money, but of course you want to watch where the money goes, and it's also extended over a period of time. But the number of investments that they mentioned, the use of that money, the wide nature was quite mind-boggling. It just went on and on and on. So I think what they're doing in the region is that they're making sure that they work collaboratively. So if the Canadians are doing something, they chip in and give something to the Canadians. The public-private alliances, they give money to that. When there's an effort by the government to increase its capacity to make sure that it can name and shame, companies that are breaching any of these conflict resolutions, they assist there to give capacity, and they're stretching this out over an enormous number of different things. And so I think that they are really conscientiously using this money, USAID, and it's great that they're up there, but it's difficult to fund these things. None of the countries really want to fund them, and I think they, with the legislation, Dodd-Frank Act, they feel they've got to do something. And the people there, Diana Putman, she was quite impressive coming over. She's really, you can feel she's really steeped in this out there, in the areas where it's really happening, at the rock face, as it were, to make sure that she's doing her best. Just hopefully they can turn it around. I think there's a lot of effort in the Kivus at the moment, a lot of focus. People realize that this area is by far the prettiest girl on the mining block, and if they can actually clean up the act, and it's all about, past history, the conflicts, that have led to this problem in the Kivus, and Mobutu, the way he regarded the people of the Kivu was, like a discriminatory in the past, and this is living on. And so some people feel very hard done by there, and they take up arms, and then they use the metals and minerals there to raise capital for those arms. But all of a sudden, they are starting to run with their tails between their legs. I think the moment they see a force bigger and stronger, they head for the hills. But the thing is to get them out of those hills, make them feel at home, make them feel patriotic towards the DRC. That's going to be the difficult thing. These people have been fragmented for so long that they don't regard themselves as being part of the DRC. Once that happens, and once they realize that you can float a lot of boats, a lot of economic boats, if you all work together in that Central African area and the Great Lakes areas, they call it, it could be very good for the whole world and Africa. Now you still have in the Central African Republic, which is also seen as part of that area, a lot of trouble at the moment. Most vicious trouble. People didn't seem to see it coming. And when South Africa itself was approached to help, we sent up a very meager force. And those poor soldiers, they worked very bravely. They were from the parachute battalion. And of course, that's my battalion. I've got 21 jumps. So I felt very heartsore for them, because they always throw the parachutes battalion into the roughest of areas, and guys normally don't survive. And these poor guys didn't survive, a lot of them. And they fought a brave battle, but it was on a hiding to nothing. They should have never left them up there. They didn't assess, the actual security situation and the risk. And now that is really chaotic up there, and it could just go back to the whole issue of conflict minerals and metals coming out again, because if they don't do something to settle that down, there will be more warlords claiming territories and using the metals and minerals to get arms, and we'll have that whole story going over again. And it's been like this in the Central African Republic for a long time. I remember Peter Flack, who was down here with Rand Gold Resources, and converting Rand mines into these new companies. He was a hunter as well, and he used to go up into the Central African Republic in the mid-90s, and he used to say to me, to say that that's a country is a laugh, because the government says, I'm the government of this country, but what they should have said, I'm the mayor of this area, this municipality, because outside of it there was just no government at all. And now we can see it coming home and hurting the whole of the continent. So hopefully this Great Lakes region will settle down. At least they're doing something in the east, in the Kivus, but I think there are other areas now that are coming out of the woodwork, particularly the Central African Republic, that could destabilize things again.
Well, thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Shannon.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.